Alrighty, I suppose it's time for a short test. Time to see what's going on here. Everything looks green on my. Yep, excellent connection, concurrent viewers. Hey, there's a couple of people here. Alrighty. Well, there's no sense in putting it off any longer. I did say I would stream at 3 Central Time, and it is 3 Central Time, so I guess I better get to it. The video on demand for this will be made available on a separate playlist, but I will be, of course, chopping up this video and to re-release it, especially since, well, for a few different reasons that we don't necessarily need to get into here. So we got Chrome. It looks like the setup's all ready. Yeah, cool. Who do we have with us today? Drop a comment if you're in here. I am simply going through the last of my prepared materials because there were some shenanigans to discuss. Who do we got here? Let's see here. Gabriel Perella, hello. Honey Badger, hello to you as well. I don't think I've seen you guys in comments before, but I'm glad that you guys made it to the live stream. There we go. There's the Arkenforge. So, we got a few different things on the docket today. We are talking about the updated Wizards of the Coast OGL, the 1.1, which is in a desperate, legally questionable, and extremely gray, probably just illegal move. Is going to attempt to invalidate the prior OGL under which other works were published. We're also going to discuss the... I don't need to specify again that we're going to be talking about a few different things. I think I already did that. So we're going to be discussing the Gizmodo article. We are going to be discussing Kickstarter and crowdfunding, both because Kickstarter confirmed that this leak was real and legitimate, and Kickstarter might potentially engage in some, I haven't seen it confirmed otherwise yet, but there's some potentially illegal behavior that Kickstarter might engage in the future. And they have not specified otherwise. So they are in my sights, as are other third-party crowdfunding sites. Then we have some talk about virtual tabletops up, because Arkenforge released a very long statement that I thought was sufficient to sum up the issue. We're going to be talking about some other third-party content creators like Critical Role and MCDM. I have not seen any material from Cobalt Press as of yet. Have any of you guys followed the... Oh, hello to... Let's see here. Daydream Tiger. Oh, there's a bunch more of you here. iCrit, Bradford Walker, Daydream Tiger, Aaron Dragon. Nice to see you guys. Yes, absolutely they are being lead on in that fashion. We're going to talk about that. So I guess what we should start off with is the OGL 1.0. I go over here. We're going to bring this up on screen. Magnificent. So, the OGL was, as most people are aware, it was released in the year 2000. It was supposed to specify content that could be used, or it was pitched as a way for people to legally produce D&D compatible material in a way that would not get them sued by WotC, because WotC is legally obligated to sue folks if they want to maintain control over the trademarks. Basically provide some kind of agreement by which people could be confident that they were going to engage with the community, that they'd be fine, they could make products for their favorite role-playing game, and then screw off, and WotC gets free additional play support to more specific audiences. It's hard to understate just how much the third-party design scene, or it's hard to overstate just how beneficial the third-party design scene is to Wizards of the Coast. Especially nowadays. 5th edition, generally speaking, an undesigned product made for maximum nostalgia bait for 3.5 players that have finally collapsed under the rules bloat of their favorite system about, I don't know, just a few years too late. Those guys would have been perfectly happy as far as I'm concerned. Playing 4th edition, had they just gotten sick of 3.5 for a little bit longer, but history works in strange ways, so what can we do? So, this document is released. It was stated by the creator of the OGL, Ryan Dancy. I believe it's Ryan Dancy. Last name Dancy. Yeah, it's Ryan Dancy. Uh, that this was to, it's supposed to free up creators to do what they like. The problem with the OGL, and the reason why this whole fiasco is being somewhat blown out of proportion and somewhat worse than anybody was expecting at the same time, these two competing angles of viewing the situation are both correct at the exact same time in a rather frustrating fashion for reasons I'm going to explain. I might as well jump into it now. Like, the OGL is a handshake agreement that offers you, it's a license that offers you no new rights. It offers you the ability to engage in a right that you already had the right to engage in under conditions that you did not need to abide by for the purpose of protecting yourself from lawsuits and other financial and legal manipulations on the part of Wizards of the Coast, that you did not need to, that they are still free to screw you over with. So, this is why I did not make use of the... Sorry, I've just turned Discord off. Apologize to anybody who heard that beeping in the background. And so I've turned off... Whoops. There we go. I'm doing a few things in the background here. So the OGL is a little bit of a trap, but as far as it's just this legal pit trap that nobody has any reason to engage with, except for the fact that a lot of folks don't understand the law, they don't have access to lawyers, they are terrified of being sued by Wizards of the Coast, and provided WotC keeps up appearances on this end of the handshake agreement, it kind of does offer a, if not explicit, at least implicit, approval to third-party content creators, and that does have a lot of value for them. And the destruction of this illusion is going to have a pretty significant impact in one of two ways, or maybe both of those ways. But it's going to be the way that the third-party community, we'll say, has been reacting to this has generally fallen under one of two categories. Now, I first encountered now, most people don't know this. I am a publisher on DriveThruRPG. I publish with the company Ash of Creativity. We have a 4 out of 5 star publisher rating, or maybe it's 4.5. One of the two, both of which I'm extremely happy with as far as low budgets and infrequent help are concerned. I think it's the company's done a lot of great work over the 8 years or so it's been publishing. For the world's greatest role-playing game, and others. But none of those products have ever used the OGL. I don't think that... Aaron Dragon says, I don't think DriveThruRPG would do that. That would cripple its business. Maybe. We're going to get to that, because that's important. So when I was designing my very first tabletop RPG product, which was a 5th edition class known as the Alchemist, I came across the OGL. I couldn't decide whether to use the OGL or the DM's Guild, or if these two were strictly necessary from a legal perspective. It was unclear to me whether or not I would actually need to use the OGL. And the more I kept investigating it, I came across this article by the Angry GM, published in May 11th, 2016. It was published not long before I actually started making tabletop content. So I started going over it, and I said, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. You can't copyright game mechanics. You can copyright specific artistic expressions of game mechanics, and derivative works also often fall under that copyright. And whether or not you can reference compatibility with a copyrighted work is somewhat ambiguous, and I say it's ambiguous because the legal proceedings are ambiguous. There's a lot of let's see here. Hello, Dornall. It's nice to see you. Hey, we got a bunch of more people here now. I'm just going to keep this laptop here so I can also see your comments at the same time while I'm reading. And patents on how people would actually copyright or would actually protect under IP law a game mechanics. It's extremely infrequent. The biggest case I can remember was actually the Nemesis system for Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. It was really funny talking. That was actually designed by a Ubisoft employee, and it was funny because I was talking to a Ubisoft employee, not to really constantly over the past 2 weeks or so. It was funny to hear that that was designed in house and the story behind that. But that's the biggest example I can think of recently is a Ubisoft employee went over to EA. I'm pretty sure it was, and added the Nemesis system to a Lord of the Rings title that they had the rights to but hadn't done anything with in some time. So they figured, let's just build an entire game around this mechanic. It's rare. It's infrequent. As Angry states here, this still holds true today. A game mechanic has to be really original and unique for the patent office to issue a patent, and different countries enforce patents on game mechanics differently. Lots of D&D mechanics are just everywhere now. Things like the idea of strength scores and experience levels and hit points and rolling dice. You know? Hello to Chris Cockgrove. Hello. So, I'm in the middle of, at the time, I was in the middle of designing The Alchemist, and couldn't really, I just couldn't decide. I knew that I didn't want to publish with the DM's Guild, because there was some note there about, which has now made its way into the OGL 1.1, so we're going to start talking about that in just a second. We're almost finished with the. Stay steady, folks. We're almost done with the backstory element of this conversation. So there was a note in the DM's Guild about WotC being able to take your content if you published with them. First of all, you wouldn't be able to Kickstarter it because you're not allowed to sell it through any other medium. So you could Kickstarter it if, hypothetically, you did not offer the product that you were Kickstarting as a reward for Kickstarter. That's something that you could do. That was unacceptable to me. I was trying to grow on Kickstarter, and obviously... So task number one was ensuring that people who, my backers, were going to get the product that they asked for. So DM's Guild was completely out of the question. I did not want WotC to have any right to any of my content in the future, to just rip it up and put it into a different, put it into a product. That seemed completely ridiculous to me. Why would anyone do that? And on top of that, the DM's Guild takes 50% of your money, which is another point relevant once we actually start getting to the open gaming license. So, and the open gaming license, of course, itself had a bunch of legal restrictions. I was like, well, I don't necessarily want other people to be able to use my content in their own OGL products. I don't want to have to abide by any of the restrictions that WotC offers me, and it doesn't seem like they're offering me any additional legal rights. They're just saying, well, publish with this and we will not sue you, but we don't have a right to sue you to begin with. So there's no reason for me to believe them. I'm pretty much, at the time, I was going to be screwed anyway if they sued me, so I figured, who cares? We're just going to do it. This brings us to a Gizmodo article that was released not too long ago. I believe it was yesterday. And significantly, let's see here, 1/6/23. No, that was 1/6/23 at 1:09 p.m. No, it wasn't released then. That's when I downloaded this PDF. I just want to make sure that was here. Hello to Swan Games. Yeah, no worries, buddy. We're just, was it? How far in are we? 14 minutes? Yeah, you didn't miss much. We're just getting now to the, OGL 1.1. So there was a Gizmodo article released. I'm going to start reading this out and offering commentary. So it says, The new Dungeons and Dragons Open Gaming License, a document which allows a vast group of independent publishers to use the basic game rules created by D&D owners, Wizards of the Coast, significantly restricts the kind of content allowed and requires anyone making money under the license to report their products to Wizards of the Coast directly, according to an analysis of a leaked draft of the document dated mid-December. Despite reassurances from Wizards of the Coast last month, the original OGL will become an unauthorized agreement, and it appears no new content will be permitted to be created under the original license. That's another reason why I didn't go with the lady who published the Gizmodo article. Yes, that's my understanding as well, Aaron Dragon. This is another reason why I didn't go with the OGL. It's because I said, this is questionable as to whether or not I can actually get this, published. Maybe they revoke the license later. It's questionable. I don't have the legal team, especially at the time, to fight with this, so I'm not even going to chance it. I'd much rather they sue me. I'd much rather they sue me for not going with the OGL at all than for actually going with the OGL. And turns out that was the best option because I saw this coming a mile away and I figured, I was like, maybe I'm being paranoid, but I'll just keep going with it. Nope, turns out I was right. As for whether or not the OGL 1.1 has actually been published anywhere, the full text of it, I'm not sure. I haven't been able to find stuff that I've verified as being accurate. If anybody has a link that they think is accurate, feel free to drop it into the chat. I will take a look at it, and I'll probably read it out here. Though I will note, the OGL 1.1 is okay. See this OGL 1.0. This is, how many words is this? Word count. I just right-click this. Count words. 999 words selected. Neat. Okay. And there's some extra stuff here. So, we got 999 words. Ostensibly, the 1.1 version is over 9,000 words long. So that will not be read out on stream for the sake of, to respect the time of everybody around us. But that is the situation as it stands. There's a lot more restrictions. It threatens to invalidate the prior license, which is probably illegal. I'm just going to go out and say that. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just going to point out as somebody who's been working with this for some time and examining exactly what I can or cannot skirt under the OGL or around the OGL. It's illegal. I'm pretty confident in saying that. It's illegal. But back to the article. The original OGL is what many contemporary tabletop publishers use to create their products within the boundaries of D&D's reproducible content. Much of the original OGL is dedicated to the system resource document and includes character species, classes, equipment, and most importantly, general gameplay structures, including combat, spells, and creatures. The creation of the OGL version 1.0, which was originally published in the year 2000, has allowed a host of outside designers and publishers, both amateur and professional, to make new products for a game that remains entirely owned by Hasbro's subsidiary, Wizards of the Coast, or WotC. While this arrangement sometimes created products that directly competed with WotC publications, it also allowed the game to flourish and grow thanks to the resources created by the wider D&D community. This is especially important in the context of Jeremy Crawford being a brain-dead non-designer who is so addled in what I assume is the early stages of dementia that any question can only be responded to with, check out our new elves. I know that you wanted some information about the Astral Sea, but that's really conducive and that's really important to the subject of the Astral Elves, and I'd like to tell you about them. Yeah, completely brain dead. Give me a second. Water. Very important for talking at length like this. In 2022, when WotC announced plans to develop a revised edition of the Dungeons & Dragons rules, codenamed 1D&D, the company said it would update the OGL as well. The OGL has been tweaked multiple times since its 2000 release, and WotC has at times transitioned to other royalty-free licenses, but the original OGL 1.0 had essentially remained intact until the company said it would develop OGL version 1.1. So, now we come to the juice of the article. But before that, Bradford Walker says you don't need to. This move threatens open source as a concept, which threatens open source software, which means the Electronic Frontier Foundation, no strangers to RPGs, has reason to get involved. Yeah, there's a lot of people with a lot of good incentives to sue WotC. Aaron Dragon says, yeah, if WotC really tries to push this and get rid of the 1.0 license, I foresee a class action lawsuit from the industry against Hasbro. We'll get into that. There's a lot of people with incentives to do that, but WotC's, as far as I know, very aware of this of this incentive, and maybe doesn't want to take advantage of it. I think they're trying to compete. Basically, right now, Wizards of the Coast is attempting to compete with others' potential urge to, I don't know, sue them. Yeah, I don't need to overcomplicate that statement. All right, cool. I just had to track that I was going through the right microphone. Back to the article. So, what is in the new OGL 1.1? A lot, actually. While the original Open Gaming license is a relatively short document, coming in at under 900 words, the new draft of the OGL 1.1, which was provided to IO9 by a non-WotC developer, is over 9,000 words long. Insert all of your millennial jokes here. And Zoomers. Zoomers are permitted as well. It addresses new technologies like blockchain and NFTs and takes a strong stance against bigoted content, explicitly stating the company may terminate the agreement if third party creators publish material that is blatantly racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, bigoted, or otherwise discriminatory. This is what we call, this is marketing speak. WotC, for one thing, is the biggest publishers of such content. But you don't need to agree with me on that or even think I have any basis in reality to say. This is the only reason people would mention NFTs in a document like this is to shield some of the criticism for the content that we're about to go through and some of the changes that we're about to read through. Because, God, they're awful. They're awful from the perspective that the OGL is a legitimate license that has some use or value to any creator using it. This is awful, right? Now, again, just to clarify, I am not of the opinion. I am of the opinion, as I stated at the very beginning of this, that the OGL is a license, providing you an excuse to exercise a right that you already had under conditions that you didn't need to abide by to avoid getting sued, despite the fact that WotC to avoid lawsuits that WotC can still prosecute under the license that they gave you. So it's useless to me, and it's why none of my products have been published under it. However, lots of people do publish under this. The biggest publishers in the industry publish under this. MCDM's monthly Arcadia is published under the OGL 1.0, which will come in handy, which will come into discussion later, because we're going to have a section on discussion about other creators, but it's significant. So it addresses new technologies, already went through that. One of the biggest changes to the document is that it updates the previously available OGL 1.0 to state it is no longer an authorized license agreement. By ending the original OGL, many licensed publishers will have to completely overhaul their products and distribution in order to comply with the updated rules. I want to focus on this sentence for a moment. The OGL specifies that the license it grants is perpetual. However, the stated in the OGL is also Wizards of the Coast's right to update this. This is some legal ambiguity. I am not sure. I am confident, I would bet money, that there is case law having already set precedent on whether or not they're allowed to do something like this. Not whether or not they're allowed to make an update to the OGL, but whether or not it actually does invalidate what was a perpetual license. Again, from my perspective, it's all smoke and mirrors, anyways. It's a license doesn't give me any actual rights, but a lot of the industry is operating under the assumption that it's real. So, by ending the original OGL, many licensed publishers will have to completely, already read that, large publishers who focus almost exclusively on products based on the original OGL, including Paizo, Cobalt Press, and Green Ronin, will be under pressure to update their business model incredibly fast. This is no mistake. Oh, here it is. Here it is. This is the meat of the this is the meat of the issue. This is no mistake. According to the document procured by IO9, the new agreement state that the open game license was always intended to allow the community to help grow D&D and expand it creatively. It wasn't intended to subsidize major competitors and expand it creatively. Or sorry, major competitors, especially now that PDF is by far the most common form of distribution, intended to subsidize major competitors. Do you see that there? Major subsidize is the word that they use to describe this. Gabriel Perella asks, "What do you mean they assume that it's real?" They assume that they here being the major third-party content creators, and even non-major third-party content creators who are operating under the assumption that the OGL is what protects them from getting sued by Wizards of the Coast, it is real to them. They assume that they make decisions, they put the OGL in their products because they assume that the words of the text and the expressed purpose of the text are real and binding and have any relation to whether or not WotC will sue them or not. In reality, MCDM by and large would not be sued by WotC for producing something like Kingdoms and Warfare. It doesn't have WotC mechanics in it, again, by and large. There's a few extra in there that they might include because, again, they assume that the OGL is real, and that's where this gets tricky. Because if you assume that the OGL is real and legally binding and offers you some rights that you didn't have before, you're going to put stuff that you didn't necessarily have rights to inside that document, or word it the same way inside that document. It's going to match, for instance, the text of the system reference document. Whereas they could have just worded it differently and protected themselves that way, and never encountered any problem with an updated OGL or the potential for Wizards of the Coast to steal your content, or have a legal avenue by which they could steal your content and add it to their own products. So that's what I mean when I say that they assume that it is real. So the OGL never really had any use or power to protect people against being sued. Again, I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice, but in the broad strokes, yes. The thing that people were most commonly engaged in that would get them sued by WotC was trademark infringement. They would infringe on the trademarks of Wizards of the Coast. And those are things that that are covered under IP law. That's why they're called trademarks. Aaron Dragon says WotC isn't just targeting the 5e OGL publishers with this. 1.1 would also target games that have no D&D in it, like Fate Core, Mongoose Traveler. Oh, that's fascinating. I didn't know that Mongoose Traveler was covered under that. It's a good thing. Hey, we all have our original Traveler on us, right? We're all good? Mutants and Masterminds and others. Yeah, so that list is even more expansive than I originally thought it was. I just thought it was limited to Savage Pathfinder, 4 Savage Worlds, Fate, and like the Dresden Files system, and Pathfinder. And Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Pathfinder 2nd Edition, I'm actually a little less familiar with. What's covered under the OGL with those guys. It's curious. This is no mistake. Again, I just want to reiterate, it wasn't intended, the exact quote is that it wasn't intended to subsidize major competitors, especially now that PDF is by far the most common form of distribution. That's just insane to me. I am not a competitor with WotC, realistically speaking. I am tech support for their dog shit, undesigned, word vomit product that has almost no value outside of the content that other people are producing for it. I have to be careful here. Whew. All right, back to the article. So, this sentiment is reiterated later in the document. The OGL wasn't intended to fund major competitors, and it wasn't intended to allow people to make D&D apps, videos, or anything other than printed or printable materials for use while gaming. We are updating the OGL in part to make that very clear. Apps, videos, or anything other than printed or printable materials. Oh my god. This is hilarious. Yes, most of the OSR does make use of the OGL. For reasons unknown to me, but the OSR has their own problems. Paizo Incorporated, publisher of the Pathfinder RPG, one of D&D's largest competitors, declined to comment on the changes for this article, stating that the rules update was a complicated and ongoing situation. Yes, I imagine. Chris Promise, founder and president of Green Ronin Publishing, said that despite the fact that one of their own products, Mutants and Masterminds, was published under the original OGL in 2002 and is still available today, they had not seen the updated OGL, and they do not believe there is any benefit to switching to the new one as described. Wizards of the Coast declined to comment for this article or answer specific questions about the leaked OGL document. A spokesperson directed IO9 to a blog post the company had published in December, which reassures the community that this OGL will not materially affect the majority of people working in the industry. Well, that was a fucking lie. Yes, Gabriel, videos and apps. What's his face? AJ Pickett, who popped into the D&D Discord. We had a fun chat. That was nice. AJ Pickett, who I'm sure everybody is familiar with, here is switching to covering other game systems. It's no longer specific to D&D because this threatens him under the fan content policy. There's a fan content policy as well. It is similarly not legally binding, but it's just rather a handshake agreement from WotC that they will not sue you. So yeah, it's shenanigans. So what will happen to the original OGL? The original OGL granted perpetual, worldwide, non-exclusive license to the open game content commonly called the System Resource Document, and directed that licensees may use any authorized version of this license to copy, modify, and distribute any open game content originally distributed under any version of this license. But the updated OGL says this agreement is an update to the previously available OGL 1.0A, which is no longer an authorized license agreement. The new document clarifies further in the warranty section that this agreement governs your use of the licensed content and, unless otherwise stated in this agreement, any prior agreements between us and you are no longer in force. According to attorneys consulted for this article, the new language may indicate that Wizards of the Coast is rendering any future use of the original OGL void, and asserting that if anyone wants to continue to use open game content of any kind, they will need to abide by the terms of the updated OGL, which is a far more restrictive agreement than the original OGL. Sorry about that. Who will be... So, yeah, Wizards of the Coast declined to clarify if this is in fact the case. Gabriel, let's see here. 1.1 would even stop. Yeah, they can try to take royalties from you. Watsy looked at GW and went, "Hold my beer." Yeah, that is funny. So, who will be affected by the new OGL 1.1? If the original license is in fact no longer viable, every single licensed publisher will be affected by the new agreement, because every commercial creator will be asked to report their products, new and old, to Wizards of the Coast. Additionally, while the original OGL did not specifically outline what kind of content third party creators would make profitable, available, and profit from, the updated OGL is very specific. The updated license only allows for creation of role playing games and supplements in printed media and static electronic file formats. It does not allow for anything else, including but not limited to things like videos. This is really key here, folks. Please pay attention, because this is where WotC specifies that they are intentionally screwing over the people who, again, believe this agreement to be real. Only allows for the creation of role-playing games and supplements in printed media and static electronic file formats. It does not allow for anything else, including but not limited to things like videos, virtual tabletops or VTT campaigns, computer games, novels, apps, graphic novels, music, songs, dances, and pantomimes. You may engage in these activities only to the extent allowed under the Wizards of the Coast fan content policy, or separately agreed between you and us. Alright? Let that soak in for a moment while I take a drink of water. We might read through the fan content policy later. It's of questionable relevance, because I think a lot of the points that I make here about the OGL and the update to the OGL are probably as if not more relevant to the fan content policy, or apply as much, and similarly the fan content policy is to be ignored. Like, I published a novel. That novel shares one of the main characters of that novel shares the name of my first D&D character. I am reasonably confident that WotC does not have any particular right to Eyes of the Forest or the comic produced by it. Gabriel Perella says, I do a Pathfinder 1e campaign on Roll20. Should I be worried of WotC's long arm? I'm tempted to lie to you and say yes so that I could get you onto a better VTT like Foundry. But if I'm being perfectly honest, no. I don't think you need to be worried. Let's see. Aaron Dragon says, all someone needs to do is take WotC to court, get Ryan Dancy on the stand, the guy who literally wrote the original OGL. Oh, his comments on this have been delightful. And he'll tell us why the OGL was created. So Ryan Dancy made a public statement not too long ago. Again, I believe yesterday. Basically all of this broke yesterday, so what can you do? I guess my response time was pretty good. Basically clarifying that, like, no, this was intended to work forever. The word irrevocable, unfortunately, does not appear in the original license, but I don't know how much good that's actually going to do WotC in court. And somebody, believe me, somebody is going to be taking this to court. What does this say? If this new OGL becomes a real thing, then Foundry might be in danger. We'll get to that. We do have a section coming up on VTTs. In fact, it might be right after this one. Checking my notes here. I have a paper tablet here that helps me out with this. Yeah, I think we're doing VTTs after this article. All right. I'm rehydrated. Of course, someone's taking this to court. WotC's messing with others' money. Yes, they are. Even if realistically, the OGL is like this non-agreement that offers you practically nothing. It offers you one right. Okay, it offers you one right that I almost never see anybody take advantage of, which is that you could take open content, what's specified as open content, from other. Hey, we're up to 16 viewers. Smash the like button. All right, we're done with that. Right. Everybody can imagine my annoying voice saying "smash the like button" after thereafter. We don't have to engage with that. Of course, yeah. Somebody's taking this to court. Blah blah blah. Yes. So nobody uses the what I would consider to be the sole advantage of the open gaming license, which is that you can ostensibly take open game content from other people who have published something as open game content in your own works. Like if I was designing Chilmus Valley, which will be, you're going to see some updates on Chilmus Valley on this channel. If you don't know what that is, it's a 5e, 5th edition what, you might ask? Subtle innuendos follow. 5e scenario module designed to be a hex crawl, a mass combat system, basically a 5.5, if you will, which has become increasingly interesting as new updates on D&D 1 have come to light. But if I had published that under the OGL, I technically I wouldn't have had to make my own warfare system. I could have taken it from, I could have taken the Strongholds and Followers warfare system if I desired and found that useful for my purposes. And I could have used the warfare system for that because the warfare system in Strongholds and Followers is open gaming content. But nobody ever does that. I've never seen anybody do that. I'm sure somebody out there has once or twice. But it almost never appears in like major products. Like I'm unaware of any specific examples. It hasn't happened for any of the examples that I would expect to be the most relevant. So it's for all intents and purposes, as far as what's legally exercised, the OGL means nothing. So the updated OGL is divided into non-commercial and commercial agreements, and the rules are slightly different if you're making money from direct sales or access to your work. Access to your work is important. That's huge for Patreon, Subscribe Star, Ko-fi or Ko-fi, but was intended to be pronounced as Ko-fi, and Buy Me a Coffee. Let's see here. And the rules are slightly different if you're, The biggest change between the two sections is a tiered earning system, more on that later, new royalties, and rules for the use of crowdfunding. The tiered earning system, once again, when we do get to that, I want people to keep this in mind. The tiered earning system was basically WotC's last-ditch effort to have third-party content creators maybe freak out less about this, because they might say, their hope was that that a third-party content creator might say something like, well, I'm making less than $50,000 a year off my D&D content, and that is probably 99% of them. So I'm fine, but that didn't happen. Everybody's pissed off at this anyways, and now there's additional legal incentive for folks to sue. So there was some clarity given about Patreon and tips, basically for content that's available for free elsewhere, but people can support you voluntarily without having their access affected. You are considered non-commercial. Additionally, all creators will need to clearly and deliberately distinguish their content from licensed content. That's interesting. So that doesn't seem different from the original OGL, but we'll get to that. The new document reads that this must be done in a way that allows a reader of your licensed work to understand the distinction without checking any other document. The updated OGL suggests a different color font asterisk on the page, or putting a separate index or list in the back of your licensed work that lists out what exactly you used from the SRD. Okay. That's technically, yeah. KL, hi, welcome to the channel. Allows them to change 1.1 allows them to change those tiers anytime they want with just 30 days notice anyways. Expect that 750,000 threshold to shrink, in my humble opinion. Yes, I would expect that as well, I think. Welcome to the channel as well, folks. Those of you popping in, I think some of you are not subscribers, according to YouTube. So if you would like, we're going to be doing a bunch of other fun stuff. I'd like to remind you folks that you can subscribe for fun new content. And now that I've fulfilled my legal obligations to the man from YouTube with a metal object on my head, we're going to continue reading the article. So the other parts of the new OGL document create a tiered system of categorizing licensees based on the revenues from commercialized work. Hold on a second. My TV appears to have... My monitor appears to have... How did I do that? This is the weirdest editor. Sorry, folks, my monitor went black for a second. I assume because my foot touched something on the power cord. That should have shut off my entire computer. Glad that didn't. Aaron Dragon says, I subscribed after your last conversation with Aaron the Pedantic. Aaron is lovely. I love him. I love chatting with him. So let's see here. Will OGL publishers have to pay royalties? Probably not, unless they're making over $750,000. Licensees get to keep the money they earn. Again, this is royalties. This is separate from Wizards of the Coast cut that they are supposedly entitled to under the terms of the OGL. But it covers, but the new OGL states that the commercial agreement covers all commercial uses, whether they're profitable or not. So if you go into the red on a Kickstarter that earned $800,000 in backing money, you still owe Wizards of the Coast, regardless of the fact that you did not profit from your venture. Note that if you appear to have achieved great success from producing OGL commercial content, we may reach out to you for a more custom and mutually beneficial licensing arrangement. The document notes, indicating that WotC is open to creating custom contracts and agreement, but at their discretion. This could indicate that subsidized competition like Pathfinder might not get a great deal. Yeah. That's basically the idea. So the revenue tiers are as follows. A, Initiate tier. If you have registered at least one licensed work but haven't generated $50,000 or more in total gross revenue from OGL commercial products in a given year, you are at the Initiate tier. B, Intermediate tier. If your licensed works have generated more than $50,000 in total revenue in a given year, but less than $750,000, you are at the Intermediate tier. C, Expert tier. If your licensed works have generated at least $750,000 in total revenue in a given year, you are at the Expert tier. According to the document, if and only if you are generating a significant amount of money, over $750,000 per year across all licensed works from your licensed works, the revenue you make from your licensed works in excess of $750,000 in a single calendar year is considered qualifying revenue, and you are responsible for paying us 20 or 25% of that qualifying revenue. The draft goes on to explain that if you make $750,000 and $750,001, you will owe Wizards of the Coast 25 cents, as they're only asking for royalties on $1 made in excess of the Expert tier. I'm pretty sure. Does everybody get that so far? Any questions? I know that we've been moving quickly. Does anybody have any questions on anything so far? And WotC goes on to state that, as stated in their announcement in December, WotC suspects that less than 20 companies are at the Expert tier. Yep. That's probably accurate. I mean, who can you really think of? Not Griffin Saddlebag is not at the Expert tier. Cobalt Press is, I guess. Paizo, Critical Role, MCDM. Yeah, it would be less. I might say less than 10. Honestly, can you guys think of anybody else? I can't think of anybody else that's making that kind of money. But again, maybe there's other products that I'm not aware of operating under the OGL. So who has to? Let's see here. Bradford Walker says, "Fortunately, this has no effect on my future design of Fantasy Traveler." Well, good for you. So, who has to register with WotC? The updated OGL that says that no matter what tier you are in or how much money you believe your product will make, you must register with us any new licensed work you intend to offer for sale, including a description of the licensed work. We will also ask for your contact information on where you intend to publish the licensed work, and its price, among other things. Creators will also be required to use a specific badge in order to publicly and obviously identify their works as covered by the updated OGL, and they will have to give WotC a copy of the publication. The early draft suggests that many of these processes will be handled through the company's official digital toolset, D&D Beyond. That's relevant to a point we made earlier about why WotC saying their justification for this was, well, we never intended to open this up to subsidize competition because the majority of tabletop purchases are handled via PDFs now, or in the form of PDFs now. So, how does WotC handle their PDF delivery or their electronic file delivery? Well, they primarily handle it through D&D Beyond. And while it might have been prior to this, it might have been difficult to do things like steal content from creators who technically signed away their stuff either by use of the DM's Guild or the OGL. Would have been difficult to do so. Now everybody is going to be sending their PDFs in a much lower volume because there's a lot of creators who, again, for good or ill, or for decisions that are justifiable or well-founded or not, will be walking away from D&D 1E and or from D&D 1 and anything else covered by the OGL for that matter on this basis. There's going to be fewer pieces of content going in, which is all to say that it would be a lot easier for D&D to monetize content that somebody else produced on their website legally under the terms of the arrangement. If Kingdoms and Warfare was published under the D&D 1.1 OGL, it would be theoretically possible and justifiable and completely legally okay for them to take all the Kingdoms and Warfare units, put them on D&D Beyond, put them behind a paywall, and maybe not even pay MCDM a single cent. Yeah, D and done. Nice. Thank you, Murid. I will pronounce your name that way, Murid. That's how I'm shortening it. That's your new nickname. So, let's see here. This is a significant change from the original OGL, which allowed creators to publish without reporting. Yes, very important. Well, it makes sense that Wizards wants to monitor who is using the open game content. No, it doesn't. It's from a corporate perspective. This feels like an impossible task. People are selling their work across dozens of platforms, and sometimes one product is being sold on multiple platforms. Whatever the reporting system looks like, the biggest burden will likely be on the smallest creators. That's questionably true. I don't know if I agree with that. But here's the good stuff. Kickstarter is D&D's preferred crowdfunding platform. Okay, this is gloves are coming off of this one. I've been holding myself back, but I need some coffee. You just constantly lubricate my throat at this point. Before my cords get scratched up. So, listen, the voice is the moneymaker. I can't risk damaging that. Kickstarter is D&D's preferred crowdfunding platform. Online crowdfunding is a new phenomenon since blah, blah, blah. I'm going to start skipping through some of the superfluous text. The OGL 1.1 states that if creators are members of the expert tier, if your licensed work is crowdfunded or sold via any platform other than Kickstarter, you will pay a 25% royalty on qualifying revenue. And if your licensed work is crowdfunded on Kickstarter, our preferred crowdfunding platform, you will only pay a 20% royalty on qualifying revenue. So, this means that the updated OGL is directly encouraging Kickstarter over any other platform, including private company sites, as any non-Kickstarter revenue over 750K will incur a 25% royalty, and only Kickstarter revenue gets a break. It's important to recognize that Kickstarter's cut is 5%. I think it's 5 to 10%, depending actually. So I think Kickstarter's actual incentive towards this, the head of Kickstarter went online and specified this. Hold on a second. I'll look this up on Kickstarter. Yeah, there we are. Here's something from John Ritter. I don't want to necessarily show my tweet or my Twitter on this. John Ritter Kickstarter. Yeah, we could do it on this. So, Kickstarter Director of Games, John Ritter, confirms a leak about OGL 1.1. Kickstarter was contacted after WotC decided to make OGL changes, so we felt the best move was to advocate for creators, which we did. Managed to get lower percentage, plus more being discussed. No hidden benefits, no financial kickbacks for Kickstarter. This is their license, not ours, obviously. Make no mistake, first of all, Kickstarter did this because they take a not an egregious cut by any stretch of the imagination. Just to clarify, they take a cut, but their cut, in addition to WotC's cut, would have gotten ridiculous. Would have gotten completely ridiculous. Can you imagine, okay, taking 25, so either taking 35% of your, assume it was 25% that WotC's taking, that goes up to 25, so that goes up to 35%, either 30 or 35%, depending on Kickstarter's specific cut, right? That's a third of the content raised. That's a little ridiculous. It's still a third if you're operating at the 10% cut that Kickstarter sometimes gets, but over a certain monetary threshold, I think it is where it's just like they just take 5%. So Kickstarter did this to bring it in line with really just the current model, and they have enough money to bargain as such. This is their license, not ours, obviously. Yeah, so I don't know if it was necessarily. I mean, it could have been goodwill as well, but just to be perfectly clear as to what I would be most concerned with if I was running Kickstarter. And this is why this is so important. Is Kickstarter has the potential. I don't know how to phrase this exactly, but if Kickstarter were to automatically send WotC their prescribed cut of content that either is or isn't going to be cut. All right, here's the situation I'm concerned about. You have no choice to opt out of this particular revenue sharing in Kickstarter, and Kickstarter just rather than gives you. I am concerned that Kickstarter will take this 20% royalty out of your Kickstarter funds directly and shoot them straight over to WotC, regardless of whether or not your product is covered by the OGL. Because again, not everything has to be covered by the OGL, but that's standard. So what I'm expecting is if they do this, if they automate this process, it is entirely feasible. The Kickstarter just accidentally tags something as being OGL compliant and would just. KL says WotC would take that cut on revenue, not profit. Yep, they specified revenue, not profit. They specified that's regardless of whether or not the venture is profitable, actually. And the creator would be liable for full amount, even if the Kickstarter ultimately fails, from what I understand. Okay, so no, because a Kickstarter that fails does not actually provide you with any revenue. If the campaign fails, it does not provide you with any revenue. I've had 3 or 4 campaigns fail, and it's not like I have to. That's not revenue. Like that's not something I need to report to the IRS, for instance. As far as I know, I'm not not a lawyer, not a lawyer. Um, but yeah, let's see here. So John Redder, director of games at Kickstarter, responded on Twitter saying that Kickstarter was contacted after WotC decided to make OGL changes. Yeah, that's the stuff we already discussed, the tweet we already saw. There was also a section in the updated OGL dedicated to conditions surrounding crowdfunding, even for initiate and intermediate users. There are strings attached to using any crowdfunding platform, not just Kickstarter, to get a project off the ground. The 2 main points are that you may only crowdfund the production of licensed works, and that no infringing material are given out as perks or rewards. I don't know what they meant by that exactly. I don't. Sorry, I just don't. Nice feed. KK says, interesting, thanks. Yeah, anytime. No infringing materials. That might mean stuff like. So they specified earlier that the OGL only covers electronic file formats, uh, static electronic file formats, which is relevant because so that means like PDFs and stuff like that. It does not cover stuff that you would plug into a like Foundry, for instance. It doesn't apply to stuff like that, like an interactive character sheet. Once he's showing us how to kill the golden goose. Yep, I saw that Mark Kern tweet as well. Um, yeah, I guess you wouldn't be able to have. Okay, so what I think this means realistically is that if there's a critter um, in the OGL that like you put on a T-shirt or something like that would be considered infringing material if it was like a perk of the Kickstarter. Um, there's also one other thing, which is I think that Wizards also I don't think they just get like a royalty. I think they also get like a cut. Is the thing off the OGL. I'm not much sure about this. This might be rumor spreading. I've seen conflicting information off of this, but there's 3 tiers, and I don't know what those 3 tiers are doing there. If WotC does not request a cut in addition to, I don't think it's just the royalty off of specific works. I think they also just get like a flat. I think they also just get a cut, which is also royalty, but you get the idea. Um, but that's what I would expect in the future, and certainly this is open to them. Like basically, uh, more or less paying taxes on the OGL, ridiculous. So The power is back at Wizards of the Coast. While there is plenty more to parse, the main takeaway from the leaked OGL 1.1 draft document is that WotC is keeping power close at hand. There is no mention of perpetual worldwide rights given to creators, which was present in Section 4 of the original OGL. And one of the caveats is that the company can modify or terminate this agreement for any reason whatsoever, provided we give 30 days notice. That's what somebody was mentioning earlier. We can expect to see probably that expert tier shrink significantly. We could see that shrink to something like 500k. We could see that shrink to 200k, or maybe we see the expert tier shrink all the way down to $50,000, and WotC decides that they want to individually negotiate with anybody under the OGL over that amount. Again, this is just for folks who think that the OGL is like real and protects you from getting sued, and that you have to use it to produce images of swords or anything like that. Shout out to Griffin Saddlebag. My offer still stands, by the way. If you folks close down, I'll take any of your designers. I'll hire them. I mean it. I mean it. And WotC also gets the right to use any content that licensees create. This is also something we discussed earlier. Whether commercial or non-commercial. Oh, that's just great. Although this is couched in language to protect Wizards products from infringing on creators' copyright, the document states that for any content created under the updated OGL, regardless of whether or not it is owned by the creator, Wizards will have a non-exclusive, perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide, sub-licensable, royalty-free license to use that content for any purpose. So they could certainly use it in advertisements. Whether or not they would sell it themselves is up to, how, whether or not is up to whether or not they think they could get away with it. That's what it comes down to. There are a lot of implications in this extended policy, and the ramifications of this updated OGL could have a chilling effect on newly licensed products. Only static products are included. All work that publishers do for virtual tabletops might have to be offered as non-commercial, etc., etc. And this article was updated with a comment from Kickstarter's director of games, clarifying the 5% decrease in royalties owed on campaigns. Clarifying the 5% decrease in royalties owed on campaigns based on the OGL 1.1 run on Kickstarter. So there it is. All right. So that's article number 1. We have a few extra things to talk about, though. Most interestingly, you guys have been watching you guys have given me an hour of your time now. So if you guys have a preference, do let me know. Would you guys like to talk about the third-party content creators next, and how some of them are reacting to this, or are you more interested in discussing the virtual tabletop aspect? Both of which are short. Do let me know. I'm gonna go silent for about 30 seconds. Alrighty. Point. We're out of principle. I won't allow myself to be monetized by. Okay, there's a few interesting comments here. Aaron Dragon says that, let's catch up on comments. I suspect that WotC is hoping most people are clueless and will just go along with the new license through what seems to be strong arm and bullying tactics. Yeah, well, the WotC does like the impression that they will sue you for just about anything. that certainly assists them because that incentivizes people to use their terms, which is why the OGL exists. They don't really have a right to sue you for the majority of these cases. The cases in which WotC has actually won versus other content creators, again, has largely been due to trademark infringement. It hasn't been due to, like, changing 18/00 strength to 18.00 strength doesn't protect you from not getting sued by WotC, but a lot of people think that's the key to protecting yourself from getting sued by WotC. The key is actually to not put AD&D with like the dragon ampersand on your on the cover of your book. That's what most of these companies have had to settle over. But again, there's this public perception, and it's well earned because WotC paralegals are extremely trigger happy because again they have to be just to protect the control over the trademark, which is the one thing that they actually get to sue over most often. But they have to be trigger happy for any other potential breach of intellectual property because again that trademark is the one thing that they definitely have the right to hold and definitely have the right to protect under IP law, and thus it's the thing that they get to sue people over. But there was a lawyer who ran the site, the blog One Stop Stat Blocks, I believe it was called, who got a notice from Wizards of the Coast, a DMCA takedown. All tabletop game companies, lawyers, paralegals are trigger happy. I can't speak exactly to that, but I have. It's possibly true. I'll just take your word for it. But yeah. So this blog creator would publish a bunch of stat blocks that in some way did match the or which were recognizably related, let's say, to stat blocks produced by Wizards of the Coast. And they sent him a notice, and he sent them a counter notice, and considered for quite some time suing Wizards of the Coast. I don't know if he ever got to that or whether they settled. I'm completely unaware on this front. But that was so this has happened before, is what I'm trying to say. Gabriel Perella says, okay, scratch what I say. From what I know, White Wolf is quite chill towards fan content. G-Dubs might be trigger happy. Some of the wargaming companies might be a little bit more trigger happy. That'd be reasonable to say, I think. What else? Who else can we think of? Mastiff Press, the publishers of Lancer. Those guys are generally pretty chill, as far as I know. Paizo, unaware. They certainly have an incentive to be cooler than their competitors at the moment. I don't think that Paizo has any particular has gotten ornery with anybody, and they have their own fan content. You know, they have their own content policies that they're happy to work with folks over. They'll market your product for you if it's third party. I'm actually looking at Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I guess this has to go on pause now, but I was seriously considering revitalizing the Trails Through the Skies airship system for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And Pathfinder 2nd Edition is quite supportive insofar as, well, both fan content is concerned, even third-party content for their game. You know, if you're trying to sell something for them, like they might advertise it for you. They're happy to help. From my limited emails back and forth with them, but you know that might have to go on pause until this OGL business shakes out. Because again, I don't consider the OGL to be real. I don't use the OGL in my games or in my products or anything like that because I don't need to. WotC doesn't have the right to sue me, but some of these other people do. So it actually does influence my. At the very least, it influences my business dealings with them. That's why I mentioned Kickstarter earlier. What happens when Kickstarter says, well, you didn't say OGL, You didn't say it anywhere. You didn't mention the OGL, but Wizards of the Coast has told us that what you're producing is going to be an OGL product. So they want us to filter that money straight from your backers' pockets into WotC's bank account. So we're just going to do that because we don't want to get, we don't want WotC to close their arrangement with us, because otherwise people will stop crowdfunding tabletop stuff on our platform. And while most tabletop, and there's a lot of like crappy Kickstarters that get funded on Kickstarter, but like if you have a ton of them, if you have 1,000 of them that all raise like $1,000, it's like, hey, that's $1 million, and you get 10% of $1 million. That's extra 100K. Sure, why not? And then you get some really big Kickstarter projects, like everything that MCDM puts out and Critical Role, and they don't want to lose access to that. So maybe they just skim that off the top at WotC's behest, anyways. But if they do that, they could get sued for it. And if they get sued for it, they might try to pin the blame on WotC, and then that'll turn into a legal mess. But we might have to. We're probably gonna have to cross that bridge when we come to it, because I think a few folks mentioned, what was it? How angry should? Yeah, report VTT. Cool. So let's go to, we're going to talk about some third-party content creators. I'm going to show you guys a clip from Matt Colville as of last night. We're going to watch. I'll set this off of, this does not need to be 1.5 speed.
Yeah, 99% of people and 100% of PCs. Greg Claymore, I very much doubt it. I'm not a huge fan of gossip, which is, I think, what most people are actually looking for. Is they're looking for gossip. I'm not interested in that.
Were you in an earthquake? Maybe he was.
We have lawyers. We have a really fucking good trademark and copyright lawyer, a literal Beverly Hills lawyer, who I've hung out with a couple times. When I bought Gloomhaven, he had already finished 3 campaigns of it. So that dude knows our business. We said, hey, here's what's going on. He told us what he thought and gave us a bunch of advice, probably the most expensive email I've ever sent. And we're like, okay, and we have a plan. And as that plan, one of the things that we don't talk about at MCDM is we don't talk about shit that we don't know. Like, and this has pissed people off, because they'll back a Kickstarter thinking that what they're getting is what they think that what they're buying is a seat at the design table. Nope. That would be interesting. That would be interesting. The problem is, in my experience, if you talk about highly speculative or highly volatile design, meaning we have no idea if this is the direction we want to go, or we have implemented this, but it needs a shitload of testing and it might not survive. If you share that with people, some of them fall in love with it and they get angry when it's not in the final product. And what you're backing when you back the Kickstarter, you're backing the final product. You're backing our experience, our design, our resources, right? And so we only go to people with, here's how, if you want to know like when we were working on Kingdoms of Warfare, I spent a lot of time talking in these streams about where the design was, but official statements, no, we wait until we believe in it. We wait until we believe in it and we think there's something to talk about. And right now, the thing there is to talk about is Flea Mortals, and we are clear to continue working on Flea Mortals according to our lawyer. So that's all there is to talk. And anything else, as far as I'm concerned, is just gossip. And I know what the internet's like, right? They release here's fucking
all
Ryan.
Right, so that's a clip. Kind of a little dismissive of concerns and stuff like that, even though dismissed as gossip. Even though the head of Kickstarter, I don't know, I would pay a little bit more attention if the head of Kickstarter comes out and says, yep, this document is the one that WotC showed us. Hardest lesson to learn, no matter how excited you are, keep your mouth shut. That is a pretty, hello Daddy Warpeg. That could be a hard lesson to learn. And it's probably safe for Matt to keep his mouth shut at present. I don't know how up to date he is. I don't know when he talked to that lawyer. But one thing I would point out is that Flea Mortals, the latest massive Kickstarter, and it's not the only product that Matt Colville and MCDM put out. In fact, the latest product that they put out is the monthly Arcadia release, which I looked at a PDF of that recently. To my knowledge, at the very least, the issue that I looked at was specified as open content under the OGL. Maybe the newest ones will not be under that, but at present, like, to my knowledge, again, Arcadia is covered under the OGL. And this new OGL is getting invalidated. So I don't know, man. I don't know. So here was my this led me into a few different lines of speculation. Here's my biggest one. I suspect that Matt Colville has, or MCDM is already in the process of negotiating with Wizards of the Coast. That's my take. I don't know if I have evidence for that at all. But here's my evidence. They have a monthly product that is covered by the OGL that comes out again monthly, is about to be invalidated by the newest upcoming OGL. And which is not their, Flea Mortals is covered by the previous OGL, but past when this new one comes out, new releases of the prior OGL, or new releases of Arcadia are not going to be covered under the prior OGL, according to Wizards of the Coast. Again, as for whether or not they actually have the right to invalidate prior iterations of the Open Gaming License is legally questionable at best. Again, my personal view is that it's illegal. They can't do that. So maybe Matt is figuring that. So maybe he thinks that he's safe with the prior OGL, or they're already negotiating in the background. And Matt is comfortable with where the negotiations are right now. That's my take. That's my thought. There was, let's see here. Critical Role has thus far been radio silent. However, we're going to get off that. I'm going to look at Cam Banks. Let's go to Matt Mercer's Twitter. People, Matt Mercer, this was interesting. So I looked on. So Matt Mercer has been radio silent on the whole OGL or Open D&D business, but I did notice in his liked tweets there was this from Cam Banks, stating, "Hot take: D&D is the #1 tabletop RPG in the world because of the Open Game License and the community of designers." I agree with half of the statement. The community of designers and players that this is fostered, not because it's the better game, not even because it's called D&D, and I would include. Or I'm inclined to agree that, at the very least, it is on account of the community of designers and players. The Open Game License does not produce this. The Open Game License is not required for these designers and players. However, for a long time, because there was no reason for most people to believe that these two things were separate. If you were publishing, you were doing it under the OGL because that's the thing that WotC put out, and most people don't want to deal with copyright law or what's potentially derivative content, and they don't want to risk getting sued, so the OGL is good enough because, hey, what's the worst that could happen, right? So people assume that these two things were synonymous. I would say it's on account of the designers that 5th edition is particularly handy right now because there are so many, again, in the third-party content creation scene here. 5th edition is a broken product held together by duct tape and love and a lot of third-party PDFs. Like the Monster Book, the 5th edition original Monster Book, and I would argue, at the very least, the next two as well, are completely are completely just useless, just useless. The 5th edition Monster Manual is so garbage. It is not equipped to handle is not equipped to handle hitting 3rd level player characters. because the math of that system just again just completely broke. It just doesn't work. Doesn't interact with how you would expect fifth edition PCs to generate or to iterate. It's okay over your first for your first campaign because your players don't know what armor class is the first time they're coming to the table. That's fine. So you get these monsters with a +3 to hit that actually do hit once or twice in a combat, and it's fine. Or maybe more than once or twice per round in a combat, right? And it's effective from that perspective. But besides that, once you get past your first campaign, the players are like, "Oh, I'm supposed to. My character does not want to get murdered, so they better bump up their armor classes as high as possible because it's a little bit more effective than just mitigating damage, and there's fewer options for doing that anyway. So I'm just going to try to get my armor class up through the options available to me. Cool. We have a bunch of people with 16, 17, 18 armor classes in our party. Let's go traipsing throughout the countryside now. And now there's a bunch of monsters who are like CR4 and just absolutely shovel XP into the players' mouths because they can't hit those players. They can't do anything to them. All their abilities like are centered around or require them to hit the PCs first. The vampire can't do anything unless he hits you with a grapple attack and then tries to hit you with a bite attack. For some reason, these two things are separate. Sorry, I'm living in Dallas. There's a few cars making loud noises. But yeah, so it's required to have things like the Chilmus Valley Encounter Manual, which you can purchase now on DriveThruRPG. I'm not even going to link that in the chat, who cares? Or the Cobalt Press Monsters. MCDM has a monster manual coming out, obviously, because people are interested in that design. Yeah, this entire edition is held together, as far as I'm concerned, by duct tape. And PDFs from people engaging in the hobby. And WotC's doing their best to get rid of it right now. Or to tell people, or to give people the impression that they're trying to get rid of it. That's the idea. Save versus lawsuit, open OGL. So now we've gotten past the third-party content creators, and I guess I could speak just a little bit more on that. Like, again, I'm in the third-party content creator scene. A lot of people are freaking out. They think that they don't know how to navigate this without an explicit agreement from Wizards of the Coast. Even if they, like me, know that that the OGL, again, is a handshake agreement. It's a license that offers you the ability to exercise a right you already had under conditions you didn't need to abide by to avoid a lawsuit that WotC can still prosecute. It's useless. Even those people, they'd much rather have the illusion of a protective OGL, because in a very real sense, it actually does offer them a little bit of legal protection, because up until now, WotC has not been willing to shatter the illusion of that protection. They probably have let things slip by that they've noticed, but didn't want to sue over, because they knew it would make them look bad, and they knew that it would invalidate the image of the OGL. But they have a new edition coming out. They can afford. They've done this plenty of times beforehand. They can afford during an edition update. They can in fact afford to burn a few bridges. Maybe not all of them. But they can afford to burn a few bridges, and a lot of content creators are just not willing to. Hey, we shut up to 18 viewers. I guess I have to pass the first hour hour and a half. Jeez, we've been going for an hour and a half. This is cool. New folks, drop your names in the chat. I want to see who's watching. Your real names, your social security numbers. That's obviously what I mean, and not just. I'm not simply imploring you to say hello. So that's why you have folks like the Griffin Saddlebag. Should I bring up the Griffin Saddlebag? I'm going to bring up the Griffin Saddlebag Twitter. Griffin Saddlebag. Tumblr? Eh? I didn't know they had a Tumblr. Should get back on Tumblr. It's actually pretty good. Twitter. Most excellent. Okay. Griffin Saddlebag, this is a pin tweet. Just a reminder that if we're quiet, it's because we have to be. We love 5e and are doing everything we can to defend its future for both you and creators. I understand your doubt, but please, please trust that we aren't making stuff up for the fun of it. Open D&D is for you. Yep. They've been validated so far. There's a great breakdown of what's in here. Taking a week. This is their CEO, I believe. And then, okay, this is all stuff I've seen before. They have some cool content coming out. But yeah, they have not been happy. They have said on other channels that they are considering shutting down. Again, Griffin Saddlebag, love to collab with you guys. Would love to hire some of your. If you have to shut down, or if you need to like become a subsidiary of somebody else, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll hire designers on. I'm entirely serious about this. I will hire your designers on if you guys are really worried about this, because you're one of the few. There aren't many freelancers out there who actually do a lot of work and produce a lot of good content on schedule. And gosh, I'd love to take you guys on. In a positive way. I'd love to take you guys on the team. Bring you guys onto the team. That's what I should have said. But yeah, this is the last stretch of the video, folks. We're going to be talking about the virtual tabletops. This is from Arkenforge, who I didn't know existed until like 2 days ago, but they had a pretty good pretty good explanation for why they're worried. I'm going to avoid, yeah, there's also Owlbear Rodeo, Fantasy Grounds, blah, blah, blah. They give a lot of context for why VTTs are so popular, for reasons that we're all familiar with right now. Here we go. Consolidating Power OGL version 1.1. The primary thing we need to worry about in the VTT space is covered by the following excerpts, and you guys will recognize this from my reading of the Gizmodo article. We've bolded the important bits. 1. From the recent OGL post on D&D Beyond, those materials are only ever permitted as printed media or static electronic files like EPUBs and PDFs, and this is from the Gizmodo article as well. The updated license only allows for creation of role-playing games and supplements in printed media and static electronic file formats. It does not allow for anything else, including but not limited to things like virtual tabletops or VTT campaigns. You may engage in these activities only to the extent allowed under Wizards of the Coast fan content policy or separately agreed between you and us. Now again, VTTs do not need to operate under the OGL. There's no reason for them to do so. Foundry in particular has no reason to do so. They have their infrastructure is actually extremely equipped to deal with what would be a slew of WotC lawsuits, but can instead be handled under the module system. People just produce a module, somebody else downloads it. Fantastic. Now I have 5th edition on my... I now have access to 5th edition on my game, or on my tabletop. And it's why Foundry has gotten increasingly close with companies like whoever runs Savage Worlds and the... They're good with Fantasy Flight Games, and they're getting into bed with Paizo increasingly often nowadays. And good for them, because those are companies which are more pleasant to work with for reasons I outlined earlier. The mostly overlooked takeaway from OGL v1.1 is that it only covers static electronic files. That is, content that cannot be altered in any way, and content that is in transferable file form. No websites! Even if you're putting up a single static web page, if it's got text from a 5e book, it's illegal. Under the OGL. Again, under the OGL. They're not mentioning this. Under the OGL. Creating a form-fillable PDF, not allowed. Building your own 5e character manager, illegal. A 5e compendium, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Nothing that is both digital and interactive can be published without a special custom agreement with WotC. So the forbidden content, here's a few examples of things that are both digital and interactive that the OGL v1.1 forbids. Again, onto the OGL, which they specified this time. I shouldn't be that harsh. A fully searchable and filterable repository of any 5e content. If you could show or hide content based off a set of filters, it's not static. Character management, encounter building. I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty close to all the things that D&D Beyond does. What else do you consider? Blah, blah, blah. They give more examples. But VTTs already have agreements, so OGL v1.1 won't affect them. This is an argument that WotC has already made, no doubt will continue making until the release of 1D&D. This is specifically what they've said. The top VTT platforms already have custom agreements with Wizards to do what they do. This is hand-waving a lot of issues. Firstly, folks, it's time to note that the top VTT platforms are specifically Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds, Foundry VTT, which is exploding in popularity because it's a much better system than Roll20 by far, who at this point we would very much consider top VTT, does not have a custom agreement with WotC. Arc and Forge, who this is the company publishing this article, doesn't have an argument or doesn't have an agreement with WotC. The vast majority of virtual tabletops do not have an agreement with WotC. So like something like Owlbear would be considered under this. As Foundry, here's something I'd hate to say 5 times fast. As Foundry founder and developer Atropos himself said recently, we've been actively monitoring this situation and we're going to be proactively working on a path forward that will cover our use case and allow us to support 1D&D. We are not, however, in a position to do so under the terms of today's post. There is work to do. Quick rollback to the conversation on third-party content creators. Not everybody who's going to stop working on D&D and D&D related content is doing so out of fear of being sued. A lot of them are just doing so. A lot of folks are just saying, we're not going to do 1D&D. We're just not even going to engage with this. We know what our legal rights are. I feel like I just glitched in real life. We know what our legal rights are. We know that we could get around this and exactly how to get around this, but we're just not going to engage in WotC because with WotC, we're not going to support their content because they don't deserve it. They don't deserve to have their content supported by third-party designers, especially not the high-quality ones, certainly, and we're tired of them behaving like this. Again, from WotC's perspective, they want everybody to be under this OGL. They want the impression that you have to be under this OGL. And so from their very own perspective, they're now abusing what they know to not be a real power, almost certainly, but which they know the vast majority of their fans consider to be a real agreement. And that is worth being concerned over, I think. I think it is worth being concerned over. It's like, well, this person knows that this other thing just is not relevant, is not real, but they want to do it anyway because they think that they can take advantage of the idiot on the other side of the bargain. I think that is worth being concerned over, at least a little bit. Maybe not the full outrage that everybody is sharing online. Again, I understand why Colville said what he said earlier with regards to drama. There's a lot of people who are not talking to legal counsel about this for various reasons. So I get it. I get why people would not be inclined to say, I get why somebody might be a little bit annoyed with what they perceive to be a freak out. But I think there's a portion of that freak out that actually is really justified, which is like, wait a minute, even if you have been tricking us for all these years and this thing, it doesn't actually really matter. Why the hell would you jump out and why would you jump out and then say that you're burning a bridge that doesn't exist? If it doesn't exist and it costs you nothing to support, and our content didn't have to be restructured by this, then this is like the most... You're kicking over my sandcastle. I didn't think that the sandcastle was I don't think that the sandcastle was a real castle. You don't think that the sandcastle is a real castle. But the toddler on the ground there thinks that the sandcastle is a real castle, and you just kicked it. And if he grows up later and discovers that and realizes, hey, that wasn't a real sandcastle, he's still not going to react to you as if you're some, oh, well, they're just acting in their own. It's just like, that guy's a dick. That guy's a dick. He doesn't deserve my support. Apologize. What the hell's wrong with you? Kicking over his sandcastle. It's not a real sandcastle. Well, it's not a real castle. Okay. That's, to some degree, that's irrelevant. Whether or not it's real. But the fashion in which it is relevant is like, yeah, there are reasons for people to be a little bit calmer about this. Those who have taken legal counsel and those who are familiar with the law on this do have their own reasons to be unconcerned about this. Let's see here. We have a few comments I'll get to first. There's a bunch of them. So Savage World, sorry, I've been paying attention for I'm probably about 5 minutes behind on chat. Savage Worlds, Shane Lacey Hensley, thank you, Daddy Warpig. Aaron Dragon says, all of this is to force people to use only WotC's upcoming VTT. Yes, or VTTs that are heavily integrated. And most importantly, are never going to advance beyond what WotC has. Like, WotC is perfectly happy to engage in an agreement with Roll20 because Roll20 sucks. Roll20 is going to be, they can safely sunset Roll20 as time goes on, and Roll20 can get increasingly bad because they can't update their software, they can't update their framework in a way that would allow them to advance in any way, shape, or form. Like, their infrastructure is totally crap. Takes way too long to do anything important in Roll20, whereas something like Foundry could pose a real threat. Because you get a one-time purchase. Maybe you pay some server costs if you want to have somebody else maintain the Foundry server, right? And that's pretty low cost. It's like, I have a Foundry server, it's $5. I didn't even have to set up my own, so it's just $5. Cool. But something like, so they're an actual threat. Even if Wizards of the Coast does have this really cool 3D virtual tabletop, Foundry can remain a threat because it's in the, it ticks a lot of boxes for people. Do you think that they will go over after Owlbear Rodeo? That VTT is completely game system agnostic. I don't think they will. I don't think that they'll go after Owlbear. I don't know if Owlbear considers itself to be under the OGL. And certainly they could stop doing that. They could say, we're no longer under this license. I don't know what the legality... I don't know if they could do that, actually. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how that would work. Updating their software to say, oh, by the way, we're no longer under this license. Because this license, according to WotC, is now void, so we're removing it from our software. Or from any notice on our software. And then we're just not going to update to the OGL 1.1. So I guess they could do that, and they would be fine. Daddy Warpig says, because they explicitly said they will use mobile gaming pricing strategy on the VTT. I believe that is correct. They did mention there's been a lot of hullabaloo about how players are under-monetized playing D&D. Gabriel Perella says, it may not be the right reaction. It might not be the right reaction for Matt Colville to react that way, but again, I would bet money, I really think it's 50-50 as to whether or not he's already negotiating with WotC behind the scene. Because Flea Mortals, again, is fine. But they have a monthly Patreon product that they put out, which is under the OGL. Again, to my knowledge, I could be completely wrong about that. As for what exactly is open content, inside that product, I have no idea, and it could be different from from magazine to magazine, from release to release. It's a monthly periodical, so he might not be worried for that reason, and undoubtedly, Matt is already aware that No, sorry, I should back up for a moment. There's no way that Matt didn't discuss the Arcadia stuff with a lawyer. Obviously, he would discuss that with a lawyer because Arcadia's release is somewhat closer than Flea Mortals is, and one of those is more obviously going to be covered under the OGL, would be covered under the OGL V1.1 if it was to be covered at all. So that's understandable. Uh, Daddy Warpig says micropayments for everything you could think of, including, I'm assuming, cosmetics for. Oops, excuse me. Including cosmetics for characters. Yeah, they would do that. Definitely. Here's our version of Hero Forge, and you can attach it to your character sheet. How cool. Gabriel Perella says, but I think that people should. Here's Hero Forge. We made Vouch and Hero Forge, and now you can add them to your character sheet. He made Hassan. Fantastic. Gabriel Perella says, but I think that people should do this aggressive outrage and throw all of their anger and venom at WotC. Maybe. I don't know. I'm pretty selective with my outrage and what I spend my energy on. That's not me being high and mighty. That's me just like having a lot of limited time in a day. And limited, really, not even limited time in a day, limited attention span. If I don't go to the gym every morning, if I didn't go, whether or not I've used my time correctly in a given day is generally dependent, at least partially dependent, necessary but not sufficient, sufficiently dependent on whether or not I went to the gym that morning. So I have to keep a tight lock on my. I'm not until I get on medication for this, and who knows if that would even help. I have to keep a very tight grip on my attention span and stuff. Gabriel Perella says it's just a soulless, lifeless company. It's not a person. It's not like you are hurting someone by doing that. Again, I sympathize with where you're coming from. I don't know if I fully agree. I understand what the general angle is, which is that WotC is a terrible company that probably doesn't deserve to exist at this point, doesn't deserve stewardship over the brand that they currently have control over. So I get it. I get it. They don't deserve us. They don't deserve the third party to support. They don't deserve players. They don't deserve to continue bringing in income. They don't deserve the support of Hasbro. Their design team is not everybody on their design team sucks. Ostensibly, Mike Merles is back on the team. And as far as designers go, I'm not commenting on any controversies he might have been involved in. But as far as designers go, he's great. He's great. And not even necessarily because he gets everything right on the first time. It's just like his approach to design is so enviable and something that you might want to aspire to as again, somebody who's been a designer for many years now. I've been doing some sort of game design for more years than not, as far as I've been alive, and I'm 25 years old. I think, but overall, as far as the company is concerned, as far as the overall approach and direction of what it is that these people produce and what it is that these people charge you out the fucking nose for. Sorry, I cursed. I shouldn't have done that. At least not before the 2-hour mark. Yeah. KL says, I don't want to hurt anybody with my anger, but I don't want their awfulness to propagate and become the norm. Outrage is the only agency I have in this. You know what? Yeah, I think that's a good way of summarizing why I sympathize with Gabriel's position. I don't want to necessarily hurt individual people, but God, I want this company to stop existing. I am so sick of this Eye of Sauron falling on any mechanics they have accidentally made fun to engage with and play, getting destroyed at every opportunity. Because they don't know how to make anything good. Anything good that they generate is made by accident, through incompetence and their stupidity and their inability to cast their gaze across everything that they've designed before they put it out. Occasionally, some things make it through. that are fun, that are fun, that are fun to play with. Uh, and This edition update, as far as I'm concerned, I haven't even done a 1D&D review. I did a video. New folks who are watching, go watch the video I did on what WotC still doesn't get about the Ranger, and commenting on their changes. It's like, oh, well, this is kind of interesting, what they're doing here, but they did it by lying. They did it by lying, and they took away some other mechanic that could have been good, that they've been given continual instruction on nonstop for the entirety of the lifespan of Fifth Edition. And WotC just doesn't. They just don't listen. They just don't listen because their designers don't listen. Their design team, as an entity that exercises control over this activity that I love, not this game that I love, this activity that I love, are just do it, just engage with it in the most evil way possible, and I'm so sick of it. It's so exhausting. Andrew Conlon says they're okay-ish people at WotC. They're just not in any positions of power. Yeah, yeah. Broadly speaking, that's correct. It's not like Mike Merles has any veto power over the years. I think WotC and Hasbro is worse off than we think. Hasbro stock is at its lowest in well over 10 years. The stock got downgraded twice in November. They closed their movie division. Maybe. But that's hardly the... this would not have been the first time that a company recovered from the seemingly Herculean challenge of bringing a red number to a blue number or a green number as far as their stock price is concerned. It would not be the first time. But it is noteworthy. Yeah, WotC just canceled 5 video games in various stages of development. That does not surprise me. I have separate thoughts on that, and most of them come from, again, my friend who worked at pretty much every game company that has an office in Montreal. And his experiences and his thoughts on Wizards of the Coast. Magic seems to be thrashing about, throwing up a bunch of weird licensed sets like 40k and such. I'll tell you now, man, 40k, I don't... Okay, the only reason I follow Magic the Gathering at all, I don't play it with any degree of frequency. I played it a few times with my gaming group back in New Jersey. Back in South Jersey. And I still have my Magic decks. But the only reason I keep an eye on any kind of card-based collectible card games is because I'm developing a card-based tabletop role-playing game. So I keep an eye out for cool art, or cool mechanics, or stuff that will inspire me. But along with those Twitter lists that I use to keep an eye on that are the controversies. But I'll tell you this. The 40k set was like the first time I had seen people react positively in a hot minute. But you are right that what we could perceive as probably an accidental success could still indicate a wider trend of I don't know, financial ruin. Kale says, thanks for the live chat, man. Love your content and your radio voice. Keep it up. Time to go out and chill. Yeah, I think it's about, 4:52. It's about time to wrap up here. I'm going to see if there was anything else that I wanted to read on this particular article. Conclusion, Digital Graveyard, Overreach, independent releases on VTTs. Let's see here. Patreons, content independent creators. Okay, so yeah. So here's the thing. People who operate under the OGL 1.1 will prevent them from creating interactive digital versions of the products to sell on the VTT marketplaces. This is going to force anyone wanting to create online D&D content to 1D&D, who will more than likely provide plentiful tools to publish their content through their own platform. Online D&D content to 1D&D. I think that... I think they meant through 1D&D. Or maybe they meant to D&D Beyond. But the ability for WotC to revoke any license with only 30 days warning can put a strain on those VTTs with marketplaces. We could very well have a message from Wizards that we need to remove a certain product at once. Now, not only does this put stress on the people, I assume they meant our people managing our marketplace, it can also annoy users who could see any D&D related purchase content vanish from the libraries with no warning. Yep. OGL v1.1 overreach. As you read the above, we expect the heavy-handed crackdown on 5e content. It's only natural that WotC would try to reduce their competition, and move as many players as possible to their own platform. What we didn't expect, however, were the changes to OGL publishing. It's only publishable license available. Again, you don't need to do stuff under the OGL. You don't. But there are a bunch of people already who are under the OGL. For bad reasons. I don't think, Pathfinder, Starfinder, with Paizo. I don't know why Starfinder is under the OGL. There's no reason for that. They could have just done their own license. They didn't have to make something that was dependent on Wizards of the Coast. That was stupid. If there's any, I'll say this: if there's any part of Pathfinder 2nd Edition covered under the OGL, that is stupid. They should not have made that decision. And they list some other RPGs here. Fate, the Dresden Files RPG, Pathfinder for Savage Worlds, and some Masterminds. Yeah, we mentioned those earlier. Yeah, so this is going to be a dumpster fire for a lot of companies that already exist. I have immunized myself from this by making smart decisions that I predicted in advance and did not and decided that I did not need to either use the DM's Guild, because why on earth would WotC deserve 50% of my money, of the pittance of money that I'm going to make from these products anyways? Why does WotC deserve a 50% cut of that? That's ridiculous. It's under the OGL because the OGL is an open source copyleft license. So anything derived from D&D 3.x comes under the OGL. Yes, but it could have been... You understand there were ways around that. They could have called it something else. They could have done a lot of things. They did not need to... They simply did not need to put the open gaming license in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I'm just gonna stick by that. They didn't actually have to do that. So this content is under our own license and not the prior. This is under our own fake license as opposed to the other fake license that we're not legally bound by. But yeah, thank you everybody for showing up. It was really fun chatting with you guys. Again, the video on demand for this is going to be available as for all the stream video on demands, they're going to be in a playlist, so folks can find those alongside my own videos, because for some reason YouTube decided that they were going to change how that worked. That, oh no, live videos are now in a separate tab from your regular videos, from your uploads. And it's like, all right, well, now I'm just going to edit the playlist so that people can find everything in the same place. And then I'm also going to re-release this, certain bits of it at the very least, and maybe with a little bit of editing. I've been watching a lot of Destiny videos recently. I like the way he edits his editor edits his live streams and handles those. And I think it could be fun. I think it could work for like an upload of video that people want to engage with in more long-form content, and is a little bit easier to find, again, because it's all in the same place as the rest of my uploads, because for some reason my live streams can't be with my uploads anymore. But just as we close out, does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any thoughts? Thank you guys for sticking around here for so long. This has really been a blast. Dang, really a full 2 hours. It was nice seeing the new faces too. There's a bunch of folks here that I've only rarely seen in my comments. Haven't even necessarily seen on video comments. Yeah, y'all as well, Aaron. Have a great weekend. I should probably warm up this coffee before I go back out. Gonna go to a park that's not too far away from from our apartment. It's just beautiful at this time of day. That'll be a nice way to rest my voice because you could probably hear it fading from my body as we speak. I'm really not used to it. For all the comments about the thunder voice and stuff like that, I am super not used to speaking loudly like that monster truck announcer voice for longer than, certainly not longer than an hour at most. But that's just something that's going to have to come with vocal training, especially when it comes to what do you call it, voice acting, narrations and stuff like that. Because a few folks have talked to me about narrating books and stuff like that, but it doesn't seem like anybody has any questions, so I'm gonna bow out here, folks. Thank you so much for stopping by. I was expecting like 2 people to comment. I wasn't expecting like uh, 20 concurrent viewers at any point on my second live stream for what is a tiny channel. And if you think anybody is going to find this handy, or if you think it's going to explain the current controversy or why people use the OGL or stuff like that, please send it their way. I really do want to have this channel grow, and I think that at this point that starts with you guys. It depends on, do you think this is valuable enough to share with other people? And I would implore you, yes, it is. Go send it to your friends. I know it is, you know it is, and you know what you need to do. Hit the like button, hit the share button, uh, turn on notifications for my videos and live streams, and share my stuff. And thank you so much again for interacting with me.